Okay, I'm going to get started this morning by just welcoming everyone. Welcome to Wat Tung. Nice to see all of you guys here. Welcome to anyone who's joining us online as well. Today is our Pali Canon and English study group, which I'll explain to you guys what that is once we get started. After our meditation, we're going to start with the meditation to be able to help you guys train your mind. And then afterwards, we'll move into the Pali Canon and English study group. And I'll let you guys know what that is once we get to it. If you'd like to join for the meditation, the way that we start is with some chanting. This will ease us into the meditation and help you get more benefit out of the meditation itself. I see you guys have the chanting sheets here. Anybody who doesn't have one, there are chanting sheets over there on the cabinet that you're welcome to help yourself to. For anyone who's online, you'll find these chanting sheets on our website at buddhadailywisdom.com. You can click on free books and then just scroll down towards the bottom and you'll see that there, that's the daily chanting sheet. Chanting came about during the lifetime of the Buddha as a way to remember the teachings, that every 2 weeks his students would come together and they would recite his teachings in order to commit them to their memory. And this was the oral tradition that was going on at the time, because everything the Buddha taught was oral. They didn't have the ability to write things down because the technology to write things down didn't exist in that region of the world. But every 2 weeks they would come together and they would recite his teachings, and this would help them to be able to commit them to memory. So you can see from the origins of chanting that there isn't anything mystical or magical about chanting. It's not a rite or ritual or a ceremony or worship. It's not prayer or anything like that. It's literally today to just help ease your mind into meditation and get more benefit out of the meditation itself. The chanting that you see here that we're chanting, you can see the English translations and you'll see a lot of appreciation, gratitude, and respect for the Buddha. And because of that, I don't think the Buddha even created these chants. They were probably created by his students either during his life or after his death, because a Buddha wouldn't go around saying, here, chant these things to me out of respect to me. This would be arrogance and ego, and a Buddha wouldn't have that. An enlightened being wouldn't have that. So that's where I suspect these chants came from, is from his students, because what the Buddha was doing was helping his students to learn how to get to this enlightened mental state where the mind is peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy. By the time you get to enlightenment, there's no longer any discontent feelings in the mind. All the anger, sadness, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, loneliness, boredom, shyness, resentment, jealousy, all of this is eliminated from the mind. And the Buddha didn't want anything from his students. He didn't expect anything from his students. And if you learn from a teacher how to move to this peaceful and joyful mental state, eliminating all those discontent feelings, and this person didn't want anything from you or expect anything from you, you'd probably have a lot of appreciation, gratitude, and respect for them too. So that's where I suspect these chants actually came from. So after the chanting, I'm going to come in with some guidance, helping you guys to meditate. So it's kind of like giving you instruction while we're actually meditating together. Then there'll be a period of time where it's just quiet and we're just all meditating together. Everyone here at the temple and anyone joining us online will just all be meditating at the same time. And I'm sure you're going to hear occasional sounds, because you can't be in an environment where it's permanently quiet. This isn't actually possible. So you'll probably hear a car go by, or maybe a bird chirping or a dog barking or something like this. And as long as your mind doesn't crave permanent silence, when you hear that sound, you'll know that it's impermanent and it's going to arise, it's going to change, it's going to fade away. And you don't need to be annoyed or frustrated, because you just understand that this is the nature of the world, that it's impermanent. So during that period of time where it's quiet, I'm sure you'll hear things, but you can just continue to do the meditation as I guided you at the beginning. Then we're going to come out of the meditation with some more chanting. And then that's where we'll start today's class. I help you to understand what the Pali Canon and English study group is, and we can actually study together. In terms of your body positioning for meditation, there's 4 positions that the Buddha taught: seated, lying, standing, and walking. And I teach these at different times in the various courses and programs and retreats that I offer. But oftentimes students are starting off in the seated position. So I'll provide you some guidance in the seated position, and this can kind of help you as suggestions or recommendations, because everybody needs to just find whatever's comfortable for you, and not everyone's going to find the same thing to be comfortable. So you find whatever's comfortable for you, and you can use what I'm going to share with you just as something to consider in order to help you get even more comfortable. So if you're sitting on the floor, in a chair, on a bench or sofa or wheelchair. These are all options that people might use. If you're on the floor, oftentimes people use cushions in order to soften their seat. And then if you're going to cross your legs, you would like them to just be lightly crossed. Whereas if they're real tight, this can impede the circulation and it cause pain in the lower body. Some people like to put their legs off the mat. This helps to get the hips up in the air, and it lessens the angle at the hips, the knees, and the ankles. And if you'd like to do that, you're more than welcome to do that as well. The Buddha put his right hand over his left with his thumbs together, and he put this into his lap. If this is comfortable for you, you could use it. But again, it's not about everyone doing it exactly the same way. There are some other options here. Some people like to put their palms on their thighs or their knees. Some people put their palms up. Some people rest their hands comfortably in their lap. So you can find whatever's comfortable for you. And anyone who's in a chair or on a bench or sofa or wheelchair, it's the same thing. You can sit however you're comfortable. Some people like to put their feet flat on the floor or lightly crossed at the ankles, but you can see me, I'm here in a chair with my legs crossed. So this is an option as well too. And then you can put your hands in your arms wherever you're comfortable. It's helpful if the upper body is erect. By having the sternum up and the shoulders back, it helps to keep the mind attentive and alert during the meditation. It also makes it easy for you to breathe in through the nose and out through the nose. Meditation is a dedicated, active, purposeful training session where you're eliminating certain unwholesome qualities from the mind and you're cultivating certain wholesome qualities in the mind. So you need your mind to be attentive and alert during this period. So that's why having the sternum up and the shoulders back, keeping the upper body erect, will allow you to actively train the mind because the mind is more attentive and more alert. So again, I'm going to ease us into meditation with the chanting, which you guys are welcome to join in on. Then I'll come back in with the guidance to help you guys. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Bhagava Bhutang Bhagavanang Abhivateyami Savakato Bhagavata Tammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Bhagavato Sāvaka Saṅkho Saṅghang Namami Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Iti pisu Bhagava Arahang Samma Sambuddho Vicacaranang Sammuno Sakato Rokavitu Anutero Purisa Dhamma Sati Satatawa Manusranang Bhutto Bhagavati. Okay, with the lower body and hands and arms comfortable, in the upper body erect, just close the eyes and start breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. Here you're just looking to establish the breath. A nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. Not forced or controlled, just a gradual inhale through the nose, experiencing the full breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Your breath may not match up with the guidance that I'm providing, and that's okay. This is your practice. I'm just here for guidance. You can use this voice as a reminder that whenever you get to the next inhale, breathing gradually through the nose, developing a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose, experiencing the full breath. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the breath well established, start fixating the mind on the breath. Either the sound of the breath coming into the nose or the sensation of air moving over the skin into the nose. The breath is the present moment. Fixate the mind on the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the mind fixated on the breath, whenever you notice that it moves off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. No need to observe the thought, label it, judge it, analyze it, or even try to figure out where it's coming from. Whenever you notice that the mind is moved off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. I'm going to be quiet now and let you do this work of focusing on the breath, cutting off and letting go anytime the mind moves off the breath. You have nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. No one needs you right now. This is your time to focus on the breath. Breathing in and out. อะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธมหาเขวาพุทธังภาควันหังอภิวาเทมิ สวากขาโตมหาเขวตาธัมโมธัมมังนามัสสามิ สุปฏิปันโนมหาเขวโตสาวกสังโฆสังฆังนามามิ นะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสมหาเขวาอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิชาจารนังสัมมุโนสคาโตโรกาวิตุอนุเตโรปุริสาธัมมาสติสัตตาตาวามนุสนังพุทโธภาควาติ Okay, if you guys would like to slowly make your way out of meditation. Once again, welcome to all of you guys. Nice to see all of you guys here this morning. Welcome to everyone online as well. As I was mentioning, today is our Pali Canon English study group. What this is where we actually study the original words of the Buddha to be able to help you understand the journey to enlightenment. We have other programs here like the group learning program. We have different courses and retreats like the Foundation and the Path to Enlightenment, Harmony and Relationships, and things of this nature. And these are the programs that are really wise for people to start in. Like the group learning program meets each Sunday and Wednesday. And what we do is we go chapter by chapter in this book each Sunday. This is the first book of our book series. It's titled Developing a Life Practice, The Path That Leads to Enlightenment. And each Sunday I go chapter by chapter, helping you guys to develop a foundation in the path to enlightenment. This week, coming up tomorrow, we're going to be in chapter 19, which is titled The Difficult Human Existence, Sickness, Aging, and Death. This is going to help you to understand the life story of the Buddha and what motivated him on the journey to enlightenment, and also how to deal with this challenging time during your life and the life of the people around you when you're experiencing sickness, aging, and death. So I'm going to be talking about that tomorrow. And the way that we do all these other foundational programs is I will teach for like 15, 20, 30 minutes, and then I'll open up to questions. I'll teach for another 15, 20, 30 minutes and ask for questions, see if you guys would like to ask for clarification on anything. And those are the best places to actually start with Volume 1 and then foundational programs. But there's this program, which is called the Pali Canon in English Study Group, where we study volumes 2 through 13 of our book series. And if this is the first time you've been learning with me or the first time you've been here, you'll still learn plenty today, but just understand this isn't where someone typically will start, because rather than that traditional style of learning where I teach for 15, 20, 30 minutes and open up for questions, what we do here is we really study the original words of the Buddha in these books. So this is volume 8, chapter 31. And what we do is I look for volunteers here at the temple or anybody online in Zoom. If you guys would like to read this chapter, you can see this chapter. It's about, this one's 2 pages and about a quarter, 2.5 pages, where someone can volunteer to read this chapter. These are the original words from the Buddha during his lifetime. He was teaching a certain topic. And after somebody reads this, then I will share some teachings on that for a few minutes. Then I'll open up to any and all questions that you guys have, where this volume 8 is all about the foremost householder. It's teachings for household practitioners, helping you to be able to get to this enlightened mental state. And there's various topics that you would need to learn and understand to be able to get to enlightenment. And those foundational programs are well suited to help you build like a framework or a foundation in understanding that, where the Pali Canon and English study group kind of helps you to fill that in. So here we're in volume 8, chapter 31. And if anybody would like to volunteer to read this, here at the temple, we have microphones in the white bowl there in the middle of the room. All you need to do is get a microphone, press the gray button, the lights will come on, and then hold it up to your chin, and we'll be able to hear you here at the temple, and they'll be able to hear you online. If you speak here without a microphone, they won't be able to hear you online. And then for anyone who's in Zoom that would like to volunteer to read, you can electronically raise your hand, unmute your microphone, and then we'll be able to hear you throughout the live stream and here at the temple. And then when I get to the question period, the same thing is if you guys here at the temple would like to use the microphones, that'd be great. And you can keep these microphones with you because you might have more than one question, or someone around you might have a question. So you can just keep it with you and just turn it off when you're not using it. That way you won't get any feedback from the speakers. And then for anybody who's online, if you have questions, you can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom in the comment section. I'll be able to see that. Or in Zoom, you can electronically raise your hand, unmute your microphone, and ask any questions that way. So would anybody like to volunteer to read this first chapter, either here at the temple or on Zoom? Yeah, go ahead, Steve. Go for it.
Chapter 31, even more fruitful than giving. If householder, one gives alms, rough or excellent, and one gives disrespectfully, gives inconsiderately, does not give with one's own hand, gives what would be discarded, gives without a view of future consequences, then whenever the result of that gift is produced for one's mind does not incline towards the enjoyment of superb food, nor towards the enjoyment of superb clothing, nor towards the enjoyment of superb vehicles, nor towards the enjoyment of whatever is superb among the 5 objects of sensual pleasure. Also, one's children and wives and one's slaves, servants and workers do not want to listen to one, do not lend an ear, do not apply their minds to understand. For what reason? Just this is the result of actions that are done disrespectfully. If householder, one gives alms, whether rough or excellent, and one gives respectfully, gives considerately, gives with one's own hand, gives with what would not be discarded, gives with a view of future consequences, then whenever the result of that gift is produced for one's mind inclines toward the enjoyment of superb food, towards the enjoyment of superb clothing, towards the enjoyment of superb vehicles, towards the enjoyment of whatever is superb among the 5 objects of sensual pleasure. Also, one's children and wives, one's slaves, servants and workers want to listen to one, lend an ear and apply their minds to understand. For what reason? Just this is the result of actions that are done respectfully. In the past, householder, there was a Brahmin named Vilama. He gave such a great alms offering as this: 1, 84,000 golden bowls filled with silver. 2, 84,000 silver bowls filled with gold. 3, 84,000 bronze golds filled with bullion. 4, 84,000 elephants with golden ornaments, golden banners covered with nets of gold thread. 5, 84,000 chariots with upholstery of lion skins, tiger skins, leopard skins, and saffron-dyed blankets with gold ornaments, golden banners covered with nets of gold thread. 6, 84,000 milk cows with jute tethers and bronze pails. 7, 84,000 maidens adorned with jeweled earrings. 8, 84,000 couches spread with rugs, blankets, and covers with excellent coverings of antelope hide, with canopies and red bolsters at both ends. 9, 84,000 coaties of cloth made with fine linen, fine silk, fine wool, and fine cotton. How much more of food and drink, snacks and meals, refreshments and beverages? it seemed to be flowing like rivers. You might think, householder, he was someone else, the Brahma Vilama, who on occasions gave that great alms offering. But you should not look at it in such a way. I myself was the Brahma Vilama who on that occasion gave the great alms offering. Now, householder, at that alms offering there was no one worthy of offerings, no one who purified the offering. Even more fruitful than the great alms offering that the Brahma Vilama gave would have been to feed one person accomplished in view. Even more fruitful than the great alms offering from the Brahman Vilama gave, and feeding 100 persons accomplished in view would be to feed a one once returner. Even more fruitful than the great alms offering that the Brahma Vilama gave, and feeding 100 once returners would be to feed one non-returner. Even more fruitful than the great alms offering that the Brahman Vilama gave, and feeding 100 non-returners would be to feed one arahant. Even more fruitful than the great alms offering that the Brahman Vilama gave, and feeding 100 arahants would be to feed one Pali Buddha. Even more fruitful than the great alms offering that the Brahman Vilama gave, and feeding 100 Pali Buddhas would be to feed the Tathagata, the Arahant, the perfectly enlightened one. Would it be to feed the community of monks headed by the Buddha? Would it be to build a dwelling dedicated to the community of the four quarters? Would it be for one with a mind of confidence to go for refuge to the Buddha, the teachings and the community? Would it be for one with a mind of confidence to undertake the 5 training precepts, to abstain from the destruction of life, to abstain from taking what is not given, to abstain from sexual misconduct, to abstain from false speech, to abstain from liquor, wine, and intoxicants, substances that cause heedlessness, the basis of heedlessness? As great as all this might be, it would be even more fruitful if one would develop a mind of loving kindness, even for the time it takes to pull a cow's udder. As great as all this might be, it would be even more fruitful if one would develop a perception of impermanence just for the time of a finger snap.
Okay, thank you, sir. So here, as I mentioned, this particular book is volume 8. It's titled The Foremost Householder. There's a collection of teachings here that are really geared toward household practitioners, but ordained practitioners can learn this too, because they're going to need to teach to the household practitioners. And all the entire book series is really good for household practitioners and ordained practitioners as well, because you can make your way to this enlightened mental state where the mind's completely peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy, among other qualities like you'll have focus, concentration, clarity, and deep memory. You'll notice that your personal, professional relationships are really blossoming. They're at ease. You won't have bitterness and harshness and hostility in your mind anymore, because all those discontent feelings have been eliminated. You'll notice that the mind's performing optimally. You're not even in a bad mood anymore, because you've uprooted certain pollutions that are in the mind. And one of the things that the Buddha taught you is to practice generosity, where you're giving and sharing with others around you. This is going to help to eliminate craving, desire, attachment, where the mind is holding on. This is the whole cause of why the mind experiences anger and sadness and frustration and agitation and annoyance and all those other discontent feelings like guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, loneliness, boredom. Every discontent feeling you have, it's caused by craving, desire, attachment, where the mind is holding on, wanting things to be a certain way. Oftentimes people think their anger and frustration is being caused by other people. They think it's being caused by something external, but it's actually being caused from something within your own mind called craving, desire, attachment. This is the longing and the yearning, expecting things to be a certain way. And when there's craving, desire, attachment in the mind tends to be selfish. It tends to hold on to things and not being interested in sharing with other people. So when you're practicing generosity, you're giving and sharing your time, effort, energy, and resources more than is strictly required in any given situation, without any expectation of anything in return. And there's multiple ways that you can give and share throughout your day. You can be opening up the door, like when you're going through a store and you're opening the door for yourself and you're walking through. Rather than just walk through the door, you could actually hold it for someone else. This is the generosity. This is giving and sharing without any expectation of anything in return. You need to be able to have no expectation, though, because if you're standing there expecting a thank you and someone doesn't say thank you, you'll be frustrated, you'll be irritated or annoyed. You need to be able to practice generosity with the goal of enhancing the quality of your mind. For no other reason, not because you want something from this person or you expect something, even a thank you, but just because you're enhancing the quality of your mind. There's multiple ways that you can practice generosity, and you can integrate this into your life where you're doing it frequently. You're going to need to be practicing frequently with every single day, practicing some form of generosity. It doesn't have to always be giving money or supplies. It can be giving your time and your effort. Like someone's walking down the street and they drop their wallet on the floor. Hey, sir, ma'am, you dropped this. This is for you, right? This is yours. This is generosity. You didn't have to do that. So there's all kinds of generosity that you can practice. And this is going to train your mind to eliminate the stain of selfishness. This is what the Buddha describes it as a real stain or a pollution within the mind where it's selfish. And that'll train your mind to let go and give and share and train your mind to eliminate its craving, desire, attachment. So here the Buddha is talking about at the beginning an individual who's given a certain offering, but they haven't done it with thought. They haven't had any forethought. They've done it haphazardly, maybe not considering what are your needs versus what it is that you're giving to other people. Because if you give without giving some forethought, you could actually be overextending yourself and be giving too much. But also if you're never giving, then your mind's going to be quite selfish. So you need to find this middle way, even with something like practicing generosity. So in this first part here, he's talking about someone who hasn't really put some forethought into what it is that they're giving. And because of that, then the people around them aren't necessarily listening to them and doing the things that would be wise from that particular person's perspective. Because remember, what the Buddha is teaching you is he's teaching you this cause and effect, or this action and result. He's teaching you the natural law of Gama. He's not giving you rules or commandments. He's not trying to convince you to do anything or force you to do anything. He's helping you to understand how your mind works and how the world around you functions, so that now you can navigate this world peacefully and joyfully and with ease. Because when you lack wisdom of this natural law of cause and effect, or action and result, you'll struggle and you'll have difficulties in the world. So he's showing you that for someone who doesn't really give thought into what they're doing on a day-to-day basis as it relates to generosity here, that the people around them aren't going to necessarily be interested in paying attention to them, because this person is kind of haphazardly going through life. But when you put thought into what it is that you're doing, as the Buddha is talking about here, then you'll notice that people are interested in listening to what it is that you have to share, right? And then he goes on further and he talks about this particular Brahmin. A Brahmin is like what we would probably consider a Hindu priest. These individuals exist today, and they existed during the lifetime of the Buddha too, where they were doing rites and rituals and ceremonies and worship. And it was taught that the common person wasn't able to improve their life, and that you had to pay these Brahmin in order to be able to do a rite or ritual or ceremony or worship on your behalf, and then your life was supposed to get better. And the Buddha knew that this wasn't actually true, that it's your decisions that lead to any particular result that you experience in day-to-day life. So that's what he was teaching. But he talks about this Brahmin, this Brahmin priest, or this Hindu priest who had been giving this offering. And he was talking about this enormous offering, the most largest offering you can imagine. And ultimately what he says is that was him in a previous life. That what he was explaining is that he's the one who made this particular offering. And out of this enormous offering that was given, just the most enormous amount of material things that you can imagine, he was saying essentially that that pales in comparison to these other things that you could actually be doing in order to practice generosity. What he ultimately gets to is he says, okay, if you make an offering to someone who's accomplished in view, meaning feed that person. Being accomplished in view is that you've established very clearly in your mind of what are the Four Noble Truths, which is the problem the Buddha discovered in the mind, the cause of that problem, the elimination of it, and the path forward. When someone isn't accomplished in view, they will firmly believe that other people are causing you to be angry or frustrated or irritated or annoyed. But by the time you get to accomplishment in view, you've actually deeply established in your mind that it's your own mind that's causing these feelings, and you can see that in a way that you can independently verify through learning the teachings of the Buddha, through reflecting on them and practicing them. You can see that it's your own mind, your craving, your longing, your yearning, wanting things to be permanent, that the mind is craving permanence. And there's other things that includes accomplishment in view as well, but this is one of the biggest ones. And the reason why the Buddha is saying that this is helpful to someone to feed a person who's accomplished in view is because if you come in contact with someone who understands things like the Four Noble Truths and you're feeding them, this gives you an opportunity to cultivate the wisdom to understand those same truths, right? There isn't anything mystical or magical in the teachings of the Buddha. He's essentially saying by you making offerings to any of these kinds of people, you're coming in contact with someone who has deep wisdom about the path to enlightenment and can help you to understand that wisdom and make your way further on the path. Because if you get to the point where you eliminate your discontent feelings and you get to enlightenment, this is the very best thing that could ever happen in your own life. So coming in contact with someone who's able to help you to get to enlightenment, this is very helpful for you. So he goes through these increased individuals who would have more and more and more and more wisdom about the path to enlightenment. He says here, someone who is accomplished in view, if you fed 100 of them versus one person who is a once returner. If someone is a once returner, this is the second stage of enlightenment. There's 4 stages of enlightenment. And someone who's in the second stage of enlightenment would have a certain amount of wisdom about the path to enlightenment. And that's why it would be even more helpful to feed just one of those people, because now you're coming in contact with someone who has even more wisdom. And he goes through all these different phases or these different stages where he talks about a non-returner. That's someone who's in the 3rd stage of enlightenment. Then he talks about an arahant. This is someone who's actually enlightened. This is someone who's purified their mind. Then he talks about this Paka, however we would like to pronounce that, Pakacha Buddha. This is an individual who's actually gotten to enlightenment by themselves without the help of any teachers or any guides, but they don't actually share the teachings that it takes to be able to get to enlightenment. I've never met this kind of individual, but apparently this type of individual exists. But they get to enlightenment by themselves, but they don't actually share the teachings of what it takes. Then he talks about feeding a Tathagata. This is an actual Buddha. This is someone like himself. This is very rare in the world. Someone who gets to enlightenment by themselves, who then dedicate the rest of their life to sharing their independently discovered teachings with countless people, and countless people will get to enlightenment during that person's lifetime. And then they will preserve their teachings in such a way that countless more people will get to enlightenment after their death. We refer to this person as a perfectly enlightened one. So if you had the ability to feed that type of person, you're going to come in contact with someone who has deep wisdom about the path to enlightenment that's going to be able to help you. And that's why there's an increased benefit to feeding someone like that. Then he talks about feeding the entire community. Then he talks about building a building for the community. He talks about all these other things. Essentially, what he starts getting to is he starts getting to your own practice. He's saying, okay, you could give all these material possessions, 84,000 silver bowls filled with gold, 84,000 silver bowls full, or golden bowls filled with silver, and so forth and so on. But he's saying what's really going to be most beneficial for you in this life, in terms of helping you progress forward, is practicing the teachings, practicing the 5 precepts. This is going to help you to knock down the harmful decisions that you're making that is causing harm to others, and thus harm is going to come back to you. Then he talks about cultivating a mind of loving kindness. This is doing meditation with loving kindness. There's an actual meditation where you can cultivate loving kindness in the mind, and this is going to knock down your anger, your hatred, your ill will, your frustration, your agitation, your annoyance. Because by the time you get to enlightenment, you won't even have the slightest dislike towards another being. Right now, there's probably certain people in the world that you like, and there's probably certain people that you dislike. But that's coming from your own mind. It's not coming from that person. Your mind has certain expectations, certain wants of things you want that person to do. And if they do things your way, you'll be happy and you'll like them. But if they don't do things your way, you might dislike them. But this is coming from your own mind, where the mind is craving for everyone to be a certain way, to meet your expectations. So when you cultivate loving kindness in your mind, ultimately you'll transform your mind to the point where you don't even have the slightest dislike towards others. There won't be any anger, hatred, ill will, or frustration, or even the slightest annoyance. So he's saying that is the second highest quality of wholesome karma that you could generate. But then the highest one that he's talking about here is developing the perception of impermanence. You do this through breathing mindfulness meditation, that you can see in the world, everything around you is impermanent. Because what the mind does in the unenlightened state is it craves permanence. If you think about when we were children, we craved chocolate and ice cream. We wanted chocolate and ice cream every single day. And if we got chocolate and ice cream, we were so happy and so excited. But when we didn't get it, we were angry or frustrated or agitated. That was our own mind causing that. It wasn't mom or dad. You know, when mom and dad gave us chocolate and ice cream, we were so happy and excited. But when they didn't give it to us, we were angry and frustrated. We thought they were the worst person on earth. How could they do this to me? Right? And now you're angry and frustrated. But this was your craving. This was your longing, yearning, wanting this chocolate and ice cream to be permanent. And you can see this in your life today, that when your bank account balance is up to a certain level, you get so happy. But then when it drops down, you get frustrated or annoyed. The only thing that's happened there is impermanence. Things have changed, but your mind is craving permanence. So if you're developing the perception of impermanence, this is very helpful for you, because it's going to help you to slowly eliminate your discontent feelings to the point where you no longer experience any anger, sadness, or frustration, or those other discontent feelings. So that meditation that we just did this morning, that's one of the best things you could ever do for yourself, because it's training your mind to let go and let go and let go and understand impermanence, that the world around you is impermanent. So the Buddha is walking you through this, saying, hey, you could give all these miraculous material gifts, or you could go cultivate the understanding of impermanence, and that's actually more beneficial for you than even giving all these material gifts. Even though you know that you need to practice generosity, and this is an important part of your practice, ultimately developing your practice and your own wisdom is the most beneficial thing that you could do for your day-to-day life. So do you guys have any questions on this particular chapter? Remember, for those of you guys online, you can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can raise your hand in Zoom and ask any questions that you like. Anything here? Let me see if we have anything online. Welcome to anyone who's joining us online. Nice to see all of you guys this morning. No questions here? Okay, let me see if we have anything. And I don't see anything online either. Okay, so now we'll go to the next chapter, chapter 32. Is there someone who would like to read that either here or online? Yes, ma'am. Sometimes the mind is shy. This is from the mind's craving, desire, attachment, but you can break through that by volunteering. Yeah.
A great gift. Monks, hear a noble disciple, having abandoned the destruction of life, abstains from the destruction of life. By abstaining from the destruction of life, the noble disciple gives to an immeasurable number of beings freedom from fear, hostility, and harm. He himself, in turn, enjoys immeasurable freedom from fear, hostility, and harm. This is the first gift, a great gift, highest of long-standing, traditional, ancient, untainted, and never before tainted, which is not tainted and will not be tainted, not refused by wise ascetics and Brahmins. This is the stream of merit, stream of the wholesome, nutriment of peacefulness, heavenly, ripening peacefulness, conducive to heaven, that leads to what is aspired for, needed, and agreeable to one's welfare and peacefulness. The other four precepts, which are abstaining from the taking of what is not given, abstaining from sexual misconduct, abstaining from lying, and abstaining from consuming substances that cause heedlessness, are repeated with the Buddha's guidance. There are, monks, these 5 gifts, great gifts, highest of long-standing, traditional, ancient, untainted, and never before tainted, which are not being tainted and will not be tainted, not refused by wise ascetics and Brahmins.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. So here, the Buddha is talking about giving this great gift to other beings. He's talking about a noble disciple. What a noble disciple is to the Buddha is someone who's practicing his teachings very closely. During the lifetime of the Buddha, there were very affluent and rich people, and there were people who were born into impoverished families. And people thought that if you were born into an impoverished family, that you were kind of going to live a life of servitude and difficult existence, and you could never really progress in life very far. And then there was these noble, rich, affluent people who were thought to have this great life ahead of them. And the Buddha was teaching people that it's not a matter of what family you were born into. It was about the decisions that you make. That if you cultivate wisdom and you make wise decisions, you can create whatever kind of life you would like for yourself. And this is what we know to be true today. But no matter who joined into his community, whether they were from an impoverished family or an affluent family, he referred to everybody as noble because they were cultivating wisdom. They were making wise decisions to improve the way they interact in the world. So a noble disciple is someone who's learning very closely the teachings of the Buddha. And what he's saying is that someone who's learning closely will have eliminated the destruction of life, stealing, sexual misconduct, lying, and taking substances that cause heedlessness. This is the 5 precepts. And you need to learn this using the words of the Buddha. Here, he's just summarizing it. But in the original words in all of our foundational classes, you can see much more illuminating language. The reason why he teaches these things is because when we choose to do these things, it's causing harm to yourself and to other beings. And when you put out this harm is going to come back to you. This is the cause and effect or the action and result of the natural law of karma. You'll never see anywhere where the Buddha is teaching rules or commandments. He's not trying to force you or convince you to do anything. He's not guilt shaming or fearing you into anything. He's just helping you see wise decision making that leads to wholesome results or wholesome karma, and unwise decision making that leads to unwholesome results or unwholesome karma. And here he's saying that if we choose on our own to be able to not kill, steal, have sexual misconduct, to lie, and take intoxicants, which again are more details in the 5 precepts, that you're giving this great gift, this immeasurable gift to these immeasurable number of beings, that they're going to have freedom from fear, hostility, and harm, because we're not choosing to cause harm through our actions. And this is the best gift that you could actually give. And then he talks here that by practicing this is something that is the nutriment of peacefulness. What he's talking about is this is what breeds peacefulness. If you're out in the world killing, stealing, having sexual misconduct, lying, and taking intoxicants, when you're at home, you're not going to be very peaceful. When you're out and about in your day-to-day life, you're not going to be experiencing peace. You're going to be kind of ruminating like, oh my goodness, what did I do? Who did I cause harm to? You're going to be thinking about these things. Your thoughts are going to kind of invade you. But when you know the natural law of karma very well, and you know that you've been practicing for an extended period of time of not causing harm to other beings, you can rest at ease. You can be peaceful within your own mind because you know you're not causing harm to others and no harm is coming back to you. But with a lack of wisdom of this natural law, you won't gain that peacefulness. So there's much more level of detail than just what you're seeing here about this natural law, but this is one aspect of it, that it promotes peacefulness within your own mind by practicing the wholesome and wise way of understanding the natural law of karma. Ultimately, he talks about this conducive to heaven. It's important to understand that the Buddha's teachings aren't to guide you to heaven. That's not what he's actually teaching you. The goal of the teachings of the Buddha isn't believing a bunch of things and then hoping something good happens when you die, even though you'll see him reference heaven occasionally here and there. The ultimate goal is to get to enlightenment in this life so you can have a peaceful and joyful mind in this life. You're not interested in believing any of the teachings of the Buddha. There's no belief in his teachings whatsoever. You're learning, examining, and investigating his teachings. That's the intellectual work that you're doing to understand them. Then there's the reflection, where you're independently verifying whether they're true or false. And we do some of that stuff here in the classroom, but you can do some of that on your own too. But then the third component of this is to practice the teachings. If you start practicing these teachings, making decisions in line with what you're learning about these natural laws, that's where things really transform for you within your own mind and within your day-to-day life. And if for some reason you fall short of getting to enlightenment, there's the potential that an individual can be reborn into the heavenly realm. But that realm isn't permanent. You still need to get to enlightenment. You will be reborn if you don't get to enlightenment within the heavenly realm. So this isn't what the Buddha is guiding you to be able to do, is to be able to get to heaven. That's like an afterlife after this life. He's actually guiding you of how to get to peace and joy in this life. And that's one of the beauties about the teachings of the Buddha, that as you're learning and practicing them closely, you can see the condition of your mind in your life gradually improving, and you'll know that you're getting closer and closer to this enlightened mental state. But if for any reason you fall short of that, he makes it people aware throughout his teachings that there's the potential to be reborn into the heavenly world. So here he's just essentially getting to the point of saying this is the best gift that you could ever give to anyone, and it's unpolluted and untainted, because no matter when you do this at any point in time in history, that anybody would recognize, like, wow, this person isn't killing or stealing, having sexual misconduct, lying, or taking intoxicants. People know that, wow, that's really helpful. And that's not the reason why you would be interested to practice these teachings, to be able to show other people what you're choosing to do. But ultimately what he's saying is not refused by wise ascetics. These are people who are on the path to enlightenment, who've given up worldly life. Not that you have to do that in order to get to enlightenment, but these particular people have. And then Brahmins, he's saying that this understanding of practicing these 5 precepts, everybody understands essentially that this is wise to practice these things. So do you guys have any questions on this particular discourse? This is chapter 32 of volume 8. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions. So let's go to the next one. By the way, what you guys have here is you have the words of the Buddha. You have a reference back to the original source text in the Pali Canon. The Pali Canon is 45 large volumes of books that are this thick. That's the largest, most complete collection we have of the teachings of the Buddha. So you can actually reference it using this reference. Then in these chapters, you have words from me that are helping you to understand how to integrate this into your life and actually practice it on a day-to-day basis. Because the Buddha's teachings, as you see, they're very clear, they're very concise. You don't need to interpret his words or figure out what he's saying. He speaks very clearly because he's fully awake, he's fully enlightened. But it's helpful to have a reference to go back if you would like to see what he was teaching before this or after this. And it's also helpful to have a dedicated practitioner and teacher kind of guiding you along the path. You wouldn't be able to get to enlightenment by yourself without the help of any teachers or any guides. And these books are available at no cost. You can download them from our website. You can take them and go print them. You can get printed versions here by just reimbursing us for our printing costs, or you can get them on Amazon if you'd like. So you have all of this in each one of these books. Okay, would someone like to read this one? This is chapter 33. Yes, ma'am. I think why you're thinking about reading too, right? I saw you.
I have to get closer.
Sure.
I may not be correct on the to be reborn, graceful, rich, and influential. Malika. Some woman is not prone to anger or often intense frustration. Even if she is criticized a lot, she does not lose her temper and become irritated, hostile, and stubborn. She does not display anger, hatred, and bitterness. And she gives things to ascetics or Brahmins, food and drink, clothing and vehicles, garlands, scents, and ointments, bedding, dwelling, and lighting. And she is without jealousy. One who does not have jealousy, resent, or feel bitter about the gain, honor, respect, admiration, appreciation, and gratitude given to others. When she passes away from that state, if she comes back to this world, wherever she is reborn, she is beautiful, attractive, and graceful, possessing supreme beauty of complexion, rich with great wealth and property, and influential.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. So here, the Buddha is talking to a female, so he's using the pronoun she, but this applies to all genders. It's not just females as well. What he's saying is that if somebody has this ability that they've trained their mind to the point where they don't become irritated, hostile, stubborn, and they don't display anger, hatred, and bitterness, and they're providing these offerings to ascetics and Brahmins, that means they're practicing generosity. That's what's actually helping them to get to the point where they don't have this anger, hatred, and ill will. And they also, because this is helping to eliminate the craving, the desire, the attachment. And this also, not only are they not being angry and bitter and harsh, but they're not experiencing jealousy, because that jealousy is also caused by craving, where the mind's holding on. Like if you and someone else applied for a job at your company and you guys both were interested in this promotion at work, if they get it instead of you, you might be jealous, or you might be frustrated or envious that they got the job instead of you. That's because the mind's craving. It's wanting something. And if you get what you want, which is that new job, you'll be happy. But if you don't get it and somebody else gets it, that's where your jealousy will arise, because you're craving for this job. But someone who's practicing generosity, not only will they have less anger and frustration and all of that, but also they won't experience this jealousy, because the mind will have eliminated that. And it's not just generosity that's helping you to get to that point. There's other teachings as well besides generosity, but generosity is an important part of it, and that's what he's focusing on in this particular discourse. So he's saying this person, not only are they not angry and frustrated, but they're also not jealous either. And he's saying, okay, if this person is reborn, here he says if, right? Because the ultimate goal is not to be reborn. The ultimate goal is not to come back into the world. It's to actually escape the cycle of rebirth. And these are all things that you can independently verify. As I mentioned, none of the teachings of the Buddha are based in belief. You can independently verify the cycle of rebirth. You might not have the wisdom of how to do that right now, but you can gain that wisdom if you would like. Even the 5 realms of hell, animal, afflicted spirit, human realm, and heavenly realm, this can be independently verified as well. But if this person comes back, the ultimate goal would not to be to come back, but if they do, then wherever this person is reborn, the Buddha is explaining this cause and effect relationship, that they would be reborn beautiful, attractive, graceful, and so forth and so on. Again, that's not the ultimate goal, but he's just helping you to be able to see this cause and effect, or this action and result. So here he's explaining this not only to help you understand what may potentially occur in your life if you don't get to enlightenment, but also when you see people around in the world and you wonder why one person looks one way and another person looks another way, this is the reason what the Buddha is helping you to be able to see this cause and effect. By the time you get to enlightenment, you will see beauty in everybody, right? There's this outer shell that we all have that has a certain appearance, and that appearance is impermanent. As we age and we get older, that youthful appearance is going to disappear. But if you aren't looking at those kinds of things and you're just looking at the inner beauty of each individual, you can see the inner beauty of everyone. Even if I see somebody who slaps their child across the face, even though that's unwise and I wouldn't do that, I can see the beauty here. I can see that this parent is really interested in seeing their child do well. And at the heart of that is that they're really caring for their child and they would like to see their child do well. Of course, they're being unskillful. Of course, they have craving and anger in their mind. They have a lack of wisdom that's causing them to be able to do these kinds of unskillful things. But at the heart of that is there's the beauty of this love, perhaps, for this child, that they would like to see this child be well. They're just acting upon it in a way that is unskillful. So even though the Buddha here is teaching about what does lead to these particular things, he's helping you to be able to see that so that you understand the cause and effect relationship within your own life and in the life of the people around you. So do you guys have any questions about this particular discourse? No questions? Okay. All right. So now we'll move on to the next one. This is chapter 34. Someone would like to read this one? Yes, sir. Yeah, go for it. The light should come on once you press the gray button.
Hello.
There we go.
One who respectfully gives timely food. Monks, when a donor gives food, he gives the recipients 4 things. What for? He gives life, beauty, peacefulness, and strength. Having given life, he receives of life, whether heavenly or human. Having given beauty, he receives of beauty, whether heavenly or human. Having given peacefulness, he receives of peacefulness, whether heavenly or human. Having given strength, he receives of strength, whether heavenly or human. Monks, when a donor gives food, he gives the recipients these 4 things. One who respectfully gives timely food to those mentally disciplined, ones who eat what others give, provides them with 4 things: life, beauty, peacefulness, and strength. The man who gives life and beauty, who gives peacefulness and strength, will obtain long life and fame wherever he is reborn.
Okay, thank you, sir. So let me explain to you guys how this works, because right here, the Buddha is just kind of helping you to understand the cause and effect. He's just giving you the raw data, essentially. But let me help you to understand the underlying thing that's happening here. If your mind has craving, desire, attachment in the mind, your mind's holding on, you're wanting things to be a certain way, there's a certain amount of selfishness. And as it relates to food, it's kind of like my food. You know, you're kind of like angry and frustrated. It's like my food, this is mine, right? And the mind's kind of bitter and harsh and hostile. It's almost like an animal kind of hoarding its food. And if you're doing this, if the mind has craving, desire, attachment, you're going to be kind of fierce and kind of look kind of like disgruntled and agitated and frustrated. There's going to be a lack of beautiful appearance. Whereas if somebody is like cheerful and bright and smiling, the face looks much more radiant and cheerful and glad and uplifted, then the individual is going to look a different way based on their facial expressions, right? We're not interested in judging other people and looking down on them for any one particular thing or another, but you can understand how someone who has a lot of craving, desire, who's hoarding things and wanting things to be self-pleasing for themselves, there's kind of like frustration and stress and trying to hold on to these things, and the face is going to look and appear a certain way. But somebody who's willing to give and share with others, here the Buddha's talking about food, then what the Buddha is saying is you give life, beauty, peacefulness, and strength. Yeah, because you're eliminating craving, desire, attachment, and you're giving this to other people. But this is also what's coming back to you, because by your mind eliminating craving, desire, attachment, there's going to be less and less and less stress and anxiety and frustration and things like this. So that means that you're going to be given more of a life, that people who are generous, they're going to tend to experience longer lives, because it's not putting stress on their heart and their lungs and their liver and other parts of their body, because the craving and the desire, the longing, the yearning, it's going to produce difficult situation in the mind, and this is going to put stress on the body. And this is why people experience shorter lifespans who have a lot of craving in their mind. And then the same thing, that's where beauty comes from, because again, if to crave and hoard, there is a certain disgruntledness on the face, and this is why an individual might look disgruntled and angry and lacking of beauty. The same thing with peacefulness. By giving and sharing, your mind doesn't have that craving, wanting things to be a certain way all the time. There's going to be more peacefulness in the mind. And then the same thing with strength, that going around with craving, desire, attachment in your mind, this is exhausting. If you get to the end of your day and you feel utterly exhausted, this is because you've been going around wanting and craving and longing and yearning for things to be a certain way. And during your day, things haven't been that way. And you get to the end of your day and you're exhausted and you're tired. But when you don't have craving, desire, attachment, when you don't have wants and expectations where you're chasing after things and basing your inner feelings on those things, then your mind can be uplifted and bright and radiant and joyful all the time. Because no matter what you're experiencing, the mind is at peace and at joy. So the mind can have this strength or this vitality, this vigor, this enthusiasm and motivation in the mind. So this cravings, desires, attachments that we sometimes describe as wants and expectations, this is the longing, yearning, the chasing after things, wanting things to be a certain way. On the other side of that would be dullness, lethargic, complacency. In either side of that, you can't be peaceful and you can't be joyful. But there's this middle way where you gradually pursue things as a goal, as an objective, or an interest. And this is where your mind can maintain its peace and its joy. Because as long as you're chasing after things, you can only be happy if you get what you want. And if you're all the way over here on the other side where you're dull and lethargic, you're not really progressing forward in life. So you'd like to have this middle sustainable way where you gradually work towards goals, objectives, and interests through wise decisions. And that's what will keep the mind uplifted and bright and radiant. But you need to train your mind of how to do that, because oftentimes your mind isn't doing that. You might be describing something as a goal, but you're actually forming your feelings on it. Like if you get your goal accomplished, you'll get happy. But if you don't accomplish your goal, you'll be frustrated or agitated. That's not actually a true goal. That's a craving, desire, attachment masquerading as a goal. A true goal is something that you can work towards, and whether you accomplish it or not, you can maintain your contentedness. You can maintain your joy. So this is how you can get to this point where the Buddha is talking about by sharing and giving to others, you're receiving these things in return because you're eliminating your craving, desire, attachment. And that's why these things are being experienced in one's life. And he's talking about also being reborn, that if somebody is reborn, they're also experiencing these things as well. So any questions here on this one? No questions? Okay. Let's see. So let's go to the next one. Let's see. This will probably be our last one for today. So would someone like to read this one? Chapter 35. Yeah? Go for it.
The entire holy life is wholesome friendship, wholesome comradeship. And how, Ananda, does a monk who has a wholesome friend, a wholesome companion, a wholesome comrade, develop and cultivate the Noble Eightfold Path? Here, Ananda, a monk develops right view, which is based upon seclusion, freedom from strong feelings and elimination, maturing in release. He develops right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, right concentration, which is based upon seclusion, freedom from strong feelings and elimination, maturing in release. It is in this way, Ananda, that a monk who has a wholesome friend, a wholesome companion, a wholesome comrade, develops and cultivates the Noble Eightfold Path. By the following method too, Ananda, it may be understood how the entire holy life is wholesome friendship, wholesome companionship, wholesome comradeship, by relying upon me as a wholesome friend. Ananda, beings subject to birth are freed from birth. Beings subject to aging are freed from aging. Beings subject to illness are freed from illness. Beings subject to death are freed from death. Beings subject to sorrow, grief, pain, displeasure, and despair are freed from sorrow, grief, pain, displeasure, and despair. By this method, Ananda, it may be understood how the entire holy life is wholesome friendship, wholesome companionship, wholesome comradeship.
All right. Thank you, sir. So here, the Buddha is really focusing in on developing wholesome friends and companions around you, because if you've ever been involved in individuals or a group of individuals that are into unwholesome things, you could see that your mind was kind of leaning towards those things, right? If you have friends that are into drugs or alcohol or stealing or doing other crimes, again, not that we would ever judge any individuals, but if we are in those kinds of groups, our mind will tend to lean in that direction. But then conversely, if you're around individuals who are interested in doing wholesome things and developing into more and more wholesome individuals, your mind's going to tend to lean towards those types of things. So that's why oftentimes when people come to the temple like this, you end up meeting people who are into wholesome things, and you start forming really nice relationships with people, because then by being around individuals who are into doing wholesome things, it'll help you to lean in that direction also. Here, the Buddha is focusing on the Eightfold Path. This is the core central teaching of the Buddha. And I teach this in all the foundational programs and courses and retreats that I teach, because this is the path to enlightenment. You would need to know this inside and out, backwards and forwards. And this is why I focus on it using the original words of the Buddha. It's so important that when you're learning any of the teachings of the Buddha, that you look to his original words, because there's a lot of misinformation in the world about his teachings. And if you're not studying with his original words, you can oftentimes be misguided. So by studying his original words on something like the Eightfold Path, you'll be able to see what did he teach teach and what he didn't teach. And then you don't believe that. You learn it, you reflect on it, and you practice it. You independently verify whether it's true or false. And you will see without a doubt that his teachings do indeed work. And part of his teachings is in addition to learning the Eightfold Path is that you cultivate relationships where people are into wholesome things. Whereas if you have a life partner or a friend or family, people that you're spending time with that are into wholesome things, you're going to tend to do those kinds of things. You guys will kind of encourage and support each other. It's your decisions that are leading to any particular result, but who you choose to be around on a day-to-day basis, this is going to influence your mind. It's ultimately your decisions. You need to know what's wise or unwise, but if you choose to spend time around people who are into wholesome things, you're going to see that life will really improve because you guys are all into wholesome things. And the way that you can look to see whether someone is into wholesome things or not is if you learn the 5 precepts and you understand what those are, and you look for people who are kind of practicing those kinds of teachings. They might not know it as the 5 precepts, but you will. Like if you see somebody killing or stealing, having sexual misconduct, lying, or taking substances that cause heedlessness, this is unwise to associate with these individuals because it's going to cause harm to themselves and it's going to cause harm to the people that are around them, right? So you're not interested in that. So if you kind of practice this for yourself, which you'll need to learn very deeply, but then again, not judging other people for them choosing not to practice it, but just making wise decisions about who to associate with. This is called discernment. So there's judgment where you're looking down on people and you're kind of measuring and comparing whether you're above them or below them. That's not something that you're interested in. That's going to cause harm to your own mind. But discernment is wise decision making, where you can see that maybe a childhood friend is into selling drugs or using cocaine or crystal methamphetamine, and you can look at that and not judge them and look down on them, but you can just choose out of wise decision making that you'd rather not spend time with this individual because you know it's going to cause harm to them and to yourself. And that's what you would like to ultimately get to, that you can make wise decisions or practice discernment based on these teachings, because as you learn this natural law, not only is it affecting you, but it's affecting the people around you. And having more and more people around you that are into wholesome things, it's going to help you to lean in that direction as well. And the Buddha encouraged that as part of a major aspect of the path to enlightenment, is to cultivate relationships with whomever you're going to be around that are doing wholesome things, whether it's with your personal life or even your professional life. If you worked for a company who is doing backhanded things and maybe they're doing corruption or they're cooking the books, so to speak, financial things, or they're encouraging unethical conduct within the company, you might choose to not work for that company because you're now around those individuals that are choosing to do those kinds of things. You would like to associate with individuals who are doing things that are wise and helpful and beneficial in the world. And you can make decisions if you know more and more about the natural law of karma. You'll be able to make decisions in that way. So do you guys have any questions on this particular topic that the Buddha is discussing here? No? No questions? Oh, you have a question, ma'am? Yeah, if you could get a microphone. Toward the bottom? Okay.
So the second last paragraph, it says, being subject to birth are freed from birth. Yeah, the whole paragraph. I'm a bit confused.
It's just some impermanence.
I'm a bit confused by the saying. What does it mean of being, let's say, being subject to aging, are freed from aging? So, like the whole paragraph, is that saying like? What does it mean relate to the friendship, the companion?
Sure. What the Buddha is talking about here is someone who's unenlightened. Someone who's unenlightened, they're subject to birth, meaning they're going to be reborn. Someone who's enlightened, they're no longer subject to birth. They're not going to be reborn. So someone who still has craving, desire, attachment in their mind, they're going to be experiencing sorrow, grief, pain, displeasure, and despair. That's discontentedness. And because they still have craving in their mind, they are subject to birth. They're going to be reborn. They're going to experience aging, sickness, and death, sorrow, grief, pain, displeasure, and despair. These are all a matter of what's happening within one's own mind that's going to be like a chain of events that leads to all of these subsequent consequences. But by the time you get to enlightenment, you're no longer subject to birth. You're no longer going to be reborn. You're no longer subject to aging. Of course, the body will age because it's impermanent, but you're no longer going to be reborn and then age, and you're no longer subject to death. While this body will die as an enlightened being, we don't consider it death. We call it final enlightenment or final nibbana, where your mind and your body separate, and now the individual is no longer experiencing any physical pain. By the time you get to enlightenment, you won't have any mental anguish or any mental pain, but you will still experience a minor amount of physical pain while you're in the enlightened mental state as a human being, because you need that physical pain. Like if you were standing too close to a fire, the mind needs to know, like, hey, you're standing too close to this fire, move away. But you're not going to be shaken up by that physical pain the way you were in the unenlightened state. So he's saying, Ananda, being subject to birth, aging, and death and illness, as well as these discontent feelings, they can eliminate that by cultivating these wholesome relationships and cultivating the Eightfold Path. You can get to the point where you're no longer subject to these kinds of things. You'll no longer experience these kinds of things. Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yes, ma'am.
Follow up this question. Could you give me a more specific example of how, by practicing this method, meaning wholesome friendship, wholesome companionship, we could be freed from birth and aging? I'm still a bit confused.
Sure. So it's not just having wholesome friends that's going to allow you to get to enlightenment. It's learning and practicing the Eightfold Path. That's what's going to help you get there. And what he's saying is people who are also interested in that same Eightfold Path and are practicing that Eightfold Path, now you guys together will be able to learn and practice this. Whereas if you had a life partner who wasn't interested in these teachings, it would be very hard for you to be able to actually make your way to enlightenment. Or if you were associating with friends who weren't interested in these kinds of things, and it's not that you can't associate with people who aren't interested in these things, you surely can. But if you had lots and lots of people who are into drugs and alcohol and sexual misconduct and stealing and lying, if you're associating with those kinds of individuals, it's going to be really hard for you to get to enlightenment because your mind's going to tend to do those kinds of things. But when you have people around you that are into cultivating wholesomeness, particularly the Eightfold Path, now you guys together can be learning and practicing these teachings, and you'll see that you'll be able to make your way to enlightenment. So it's the Eightfold Path that is going to ultimately get you to enlightenment. And part of that, the Buddha is saying, cultivate wholesome friends, that this is very important. You got it? Okay. All right. Let me see if we have any questions anywhere else. You have a question? Yes, ma'am.
Question is about the previous chapter. I wanted to ask some question about peace, respect, give. Yeah. It's for sometimes like a giver or a donor, and you give something to people. They may need the thing that you have given them, but sometimes maybe in return you won't get the kindness or peacefulness from them. Mm-hmm. It happens a lot to me.
Yeah. So when you're giving something, you should never have any expectation of anything in return from that person. That's not generosity if someone's doing that. Even if you want to thank you from this person, that's still the mind wanting something. You need to be able to practice generosity where you have no expectation of anything in return. And where these qualities are going to be experienced is that because your mind is practicing generosity to enhance the quality of your mind, meaning eliminate craving, desire, attachment, where your mind's letting go, that's where these come in. It doesn't come from the other person. So if you gave a gift to me, you're not just going to automatically get these things from me. What you're doing is you're training your mind to eliminate craving, desire, attachment, and now that's where these things are going to be experienced because your mind's no longer holding on, wanting things to be a certain way. And now your mind will be more peaceful and more joyful because of that.
That is the thing. It's maybe I feel peaceful, whatever your reaction about this, and I feel okay because I want to donate, want to give something. But maybe 1 time or 2 times or 3 times, 9 times, So the same thing you have got from the people you have, the thing that you have given, you got like something like hatred or not very kind things from them. So you don't care. So because I want to give, it doesn't mean I have to give like, I have to return, like get some return from them, like candies. But the more you do it, the more you feel that, okay, is that really worth giving them? Because they are really they're not really showing their appreciation to you. You may not like expecting something from them, like appreciation. But the more you do it, the more you feel like a little bit frustrated or a little bit. So you keep calm down. You don't want, okay, I don't care. I keep giving because that is me. That's my personality. And then maybe after, what is it about it that you're doing this? Because they are really not that kind.
Yeah, so the frustration you're experiencing is because of your craving, you wanting things to be a certain way. The other person isn't causing you to be frustrated. It's your own mind that's causing that. But who you choose to give gifts to is a choice for you to make. And you can wisely choose to give gifts to people or not give gifts to people based on discernment or wise decision making. Here, the Buddha isn't talking about that in this particular teaching. But if you look at his other teachings, you can see where he gives you guidance on who would it be wise to give gifts to. And that's something that it sounds like you need, because if you're giving gifts to people and they're being bitter and harsh and hostile and aggressive with you, this would be unwise to continue to give gifts from that to that person. Again, you're not expecting for them to be a certain way, but there is a certain level of wise decision making about who you choose to give gifts to, and that's a separate discourse. What you might decide to learn is in volume 13. It's titled Generosity. It's all about different discourses about generosity, and the Buddha teaches you about how to determine whether it would be wise for you to give gifts to somebody or not. And it's all based on the natural laws. They're not rules or commandments or anything like that, but right now it sounds like you're still giving gifts to people who are being bitter and harsh and hostile, and this is unwise in that situation. Even though you're giving gifts, and it would be wise to give gifts without any expectation of anything in return, when someone's being bitter and harsh and hostile to you, it would most often be unwise to continue to practice generosity with that person, even though you can do that through wise decision making and without an expectation of anything in return from them.
So those kind of person is not worthy being given from other people?
Right. The Buddha teaches you to look for certain qualities of an individual to be able to give gifts to. And if you're seeing someone who's being angry and bitter and harsh and hostile and vindictive and resentful, that's not the type of individual that you would necessarily be interested in giving gifts to. Again, not expecting anything from them, but the Buddha does give you guidance and helping you to be able to see who would it be wise to share your generosity with. Because if somebody's being bitter, harsh, and hostile, and you continue to be generous with them, all you're teaching them is, hey, if I keep being bitter and harsh and hostile to this person, they're going to keep giving me gifts. I see this sometimes with parents, that children will be bitter and harsh and resentful towards their parents, and the parents still keep giving them stuff, where this just kind of encourages that behavior and that conduct. Whereas if you change the way you function, then people around you will choose to change the way they function too. And again, your generosity shouldn't be because you expect them to change, but you can make wise choices about how you choose to give and share with others. And that's going to either incentivize or de-incentivize certain behavior and conduct around you.
No, nothing expectation from them. Maybe I have an expectation from them that maybe one day they will be think something or like appreciate something, or maybe I don't know. If you just keep giving them, well, no matter what they want, what they react from your behavior, it might be that someday they'll be changed or like towards you and to feel some appreciation or something. They'll be not that hostile or not that,
Yeah, that's not what I would teach. That's not what the Buddha would teach. It's just to give to people without any thought behind it. You need to have a certain thought. Every single aspect of your life, as you're moving to this higher consciousness, there's thought and intention behind each individual decision that you make. Every single decision, by the time you get to enlightenment, it's well thought out, and you know that you're making wise decisions and continuing to give gifts to people who are bitter and harsh and hostile and aggressive. That's not very wise, and it's only going to produce unwholesome results in those situations.
Also, I understand what you're saying, because maybe the being hostile or unkind is not really permanent for those people who you want to give something. They may change one day. That is, their emotions are not permanent either. So maybe they will change. So you keep giving them, you have confidence in them that nothing is permanent.
Yeah. That's a choice for you to make in your life. What I'm sharing with you is that if you give to people who are bitter, harsh, and hostile, what you're going to notice is you're surrounded by a bunch of people who are bitter, harsh, and hostile. Because people realize, like, hey, if you're bitter, harsh, and hostile with this lady, she's going to give you gifts. So you're going to have 20, 30, 50 people around you who are bitter, harsh, and hostile. And I wouldn't advise you to do it that way. But if you choose to do it that way, that's your choice. I would encourage you, if you're going to practice generosity, to learn what the Buddha taught about how to recognize individuals who to practice generosity with and practice with those people, because then you're going to be surrounded by people who are into wholesome things, and that's what's going to help you.
Yeah, I understand, Lilia. They're going to take it for granted somehow. That would be not that good way. Thank you. I really appreciate that.
Yeah,
Thank
you're
you.
welcome. Okay. So, like I mentioned, I'm going to end class here, and I'm just going to end by thanking all of you guys for joining. Thank you for your interest to learn and practice the teachings of the Buddha. If you guys would like to learn more, you're more than welcome to come tomorrow at 9 a.m. I'm going to be giving a talk on the life story of the Buddha, helping you to understand what motivated him towards this path to enlightenment and explaining his entire journey from birth until death. So if you'd like to learn about that, of course, we're going to start with meditation. So you guys are welcome to come for that. And then afterwards, we're going to have a temple cleanup day where we're going to kind of do a deep cleaning of our classroom and other parts outside in the temple at large to kind of spruce up the temple a little bit. We do this once every 3 months in order to kind of help the temple shine more and more brightly. So you're more than welcome to come to that if you'd like, and even bring other people if you'd like. So thank you all for joining. If you'd like to learn more, as I mentioned, there's lots of courses and retreats and stuff like that. You'll see all of that on the bulletin board over there and on our website as well. And you're welcome to come talk to me if you have any questions. So whatever you choose to do, have a really wonderful and lovely rest of your day. We'll see you next time. Sawadee krap. Sawadee krap. Thank you again for watching. Enjoy your meditation. Look forward to seeing you online and answering any questions that you might have. Thank you so much.